Cheers to the ghost who always pays but whose face no one ever sees. Kyle raised his beer can, his voice ringing out in the July midday sun, as if he'd just said the funniest thing in his life. Jenna burst into laughter. My mother gave a faint smirk while my father merely glanced over his glass of whiskey before returning to his plate of grilled ribs. I lifted my glass of white wine, lightly clinking it against Kyle's beer can. I smiled a smile as soft as the frosting on an expired birthday cake and whispered, "Cheers to the underworld money that just vanished." No one noticed. No one cared. They thought I was just playing along with the joke. But at that moment, my fingers glided under the table, opening the banking app. I scanned the list of accounts and pressed a button. Freeze all. A faint ding sounded barely audible to anyone but me. It all happened in less than 5 seconds. Like a final nail in the coffin. My name is Grace, 38 years old, software engineer, divorced, no children in my care, and at least until this picnic today, the person who paid for everything in the family, without anyone ever acknowledging it. We were at Washington State Park in the northwest area, where ancient oaks stretched their branches to provide cool shade, and the wooden picnic tables were cracked from years of use. My family chose this place for our annual picnic, a so-called tradition. In reality, it was just another occasion for everyone to show up, eat show-off, and assume I'd cover all the expenses. This year, they demanded more. No more hot dogs and discount soda. Kyle suggested a Texas-style BBQ food truck. Jenna insisted on a DJ playing 90s-themed music, and my mother was adamant about having checkered tablecloths ironed to perfection. I agreed to everything. I always did. Because if I didn't, who would? I booked the BBQ truck with smoked ribs, spicy beans, and cornbread. I hired a local DJ, a college kid named Marcus, with an old portable speaker system, but a knack for picking songs that pleased middle-aged folks. I rented folding chairs because my father complained about back pain. I even arranged for floral decorations, specifically instructing the organizer to use recycled glass jars for an eco-friendly touch. Everything was meticulously planned and paid for with a credit card in my name, and of course no one asked who was footing the bill. I used to think as long as the family was happy I could handle it. One more time. One more summer. One more occasion to set myself aside and play the role of the dutiful daughter. But this time was different. This time I couldn't stand the way Kyle said the ghost who pays. As if I didn't exist. As if my contributions were just a given. No one looked me in the eye when they said those things. Jenna was busy posting Fam Jam 2025 photos on Instagram, no credit given to anyone. My mother nodded approvingly at the floral arrangements, then praised Jenna for picking nice colors. The DJ played California Dreamin', and Kyle tapped his foot to the beat as if he'd orchestrated the whole thing. I sat there in that familiar scene, feeling like a silent shadow. They didn't know this wasn't just another annual family day. This was my farewell. Not the kind with yelling chair throwing or tears. A quiet farewell. Planned, strategic. Like withdrawing from a company that's been exploiting you for years without paying you on time. When I got divorced, my mother didn't ask if I was okay. She only said, "So now you can help Jenna watch her kids, right?" When I lost sleep working overtime until midnight, Kyle asked, "Can I borrow your credit card for concert tickets? I swear I'll pay you back." No one ever paid me back. I still remember a time at a local church service when my mother bragged to everyone, "My daughter's doing so well living in Portland, taking care of the whole family." They clapped, but no one came up to ask what I did, or if I ever felt lonely. They didn't know my face. I was just a name attached to a boastful story. I thought about all of this when Jenna tried to swipe her card to buy more drinks, and it was declined. Kyle got a bank notification. The rent payment failed. My father frowned at his phone, muttering, "Is the bank glitching today?" I sipped my wine, staying silent. No one suspected what was happening. I didn't say a word. One by one, they grew confused, then frustrated. Jenna said her card was acting weird. Kyle obsessively checked his banking app. My mother pulled me aside and whispered, "Can you check if my card's been hacked?" I nodded and said, "It's probably a network issue." Try again tomorrow. I knew it wasn't a network issue. I had done it. I froze every related account. The family Venmo, my mother's secondary card, Kyle's co-signed loans, Jenna's phone data plan under my name. All of it gone in 5 seconds. I used to think I was the only one keeping this family afloat. But in reality, I was the only one refusing to let go. I'd played that role for too long, the mature, kind, sacrificial daughter. But at what cost I lost my daughter, my marriage, and even myself. I no longer knew what I liked or disliked. I only knew what others needed and how to meet those needs. I'd become a walking invoice with a heartbeat. The picnic was winding down. The DJ packed up his speakers. The sun began to soften. They still didn't understand why the family's financial system was paralyzed. But I wasn't in a rush to explain. I didn't owe them an explanation anymore. Kyle sighed heavily. Jenna scrolled her phone, tapping the banking app as if expecting a miracle. My parents whispered about replacing the card. No one suspected I'd pulled the plug. No one believed I would. But they'd find out, soon enough. I gathered the plastic cups, tossed them into a biodegradable trash bag. I packed up the leftover cornbread, wiped my hands on a damp cloth, then looked up at the sky, turning pale orange. There was no anger in me. Only one thing: relief. For the first time in years, I didn't have to explain or soothe anyone. I just sat there watching the chaos they'd created when they lost the resource they thought was permanent. I left the picnic before sunset. No one saw me off. No one noticed. They'd remember me when they needed to pay their phone bill, when they tried to book an Uber, when their grocery card was declined. And then they'd text. They'd call. They'd scramble to restore everything. But I wouldn't be there anymore. I had withdrawn. As I got into my car, I glanced in the rearview mirror, seeing my reflection, hair neatly tied, calm eyes, steady hands. No longer Grace, the one who pays. Just Grace, the woman learning to exist for herself. I started the car. An old Tracy Chapman song played on the radio. I didn't remember the title, only the last line, "You got a fast car." I want a ticket to anywhere. I turned left onto the highway, leaving Kyle's piercing laughter and the last rays of sunlight behind. "Sis, sorry to bother you, but today's the final deadline for tuition. If I don't pay by 5 p.m., she'll lose her spot." Jenna's first text came at 10:41 a.m. on Tuesday, a week before the picnic. I was in a meeting with the tech team discussing the rollout of a new payment system. The Zoom window was open, a colleague was sharing their screen, and I was just staring at my phone where that text sat, quietly, like a rhetorical question. I knew I had to answer. 11:12. Another text. "I know you're busy, but it's just $980. I swear I'll pay you back. I've got an interview next week." No greeting, no small talk, just a nudge written in a tone I'd grown too familiar with. 11:53. "Grace, if you help me this time, I'll sort out my finances, I promise." 12:17. "Sorry, you're probably in a meeting. It's just, I don't want her to drop out mid-semester. It'd be unfair to her." 12:44. "I'll send the payment details, okay?" I exhaled softly, my fingers sliding into the banking app. Savings account $236, checking account $890, credit card nearly maxed out. I sent the money, no questions asked. I'd told myself I'd learn to say no. I'd read books on setting boundaries, even made lists of responsible, guilt-free responses. But when the texts came, and Jenna's name popped up with those 3 blinking dots waiting for my reply, I was always the one to cave first. I don't have a son. I only have a niece, Jenna's daughter, whom I held since she was too young to roll over. I remember giving her a box of colored pencils once, and she called me Auntie Fairy, because Auntie always has magic. I didn't know what real magic was, but I knew I had a credit card, and a heart full of empathy. And in this family, that was more than enough to be exploited. That evening, my mother called. "Grace, can you cover this month's car payment for us?" The washing machine broke, and we had to replace the motor. "You know how it is, old age back pain. Your father can't stand at the shop for long." I said okay. Not because I was flush with cash, but because I didn't want to hear the guilt-laced complaints that would follow. My mother had a way of talking that made you feel guilty for living independently. She didn't need to yell. A soft sigh, "A single old age is lonely," was enough to make me send the money. The silver-gray Subaru I'd co-signed for it 3 years ago. Back then, my mother said, "The old car keeps breaking down on the way to church." I didn't go to church, but I paid for their spiritual peace of mind. I lived alone in a small apartment in Portland. 2 rooms, 1 bedroom, 1 office, and a balcony too narrow for a coffee table. I didn't decorate beyond a fake lavender plant and a framed photo of my daughter taken 2 years ago, the last time she spent the whole summer with me. I hadn't bought new clothes in 6 months. Every morning I picked one of 3 shirts with frayed collars. I ate sandwiches brought from home, drank instant coffee at the office. I called it saving, but it was really squeezing because I had to be ready for sudden calls from family like a fire alarm at 3 a.m. And sometimes I wondered if I disappeared, would they remember who I was? Or just that someone paid their phone bill last month. I clearly remember the day my husband took my daughter away. It was a winter afternoon, light snow falling. I came home after a long shift and the house was empty. My daughter's bed was neatly made, her clothes gone, and on the table was a note: I'm taking her to New Mexico for a while. Don't worry. I called my mother. She didn't ask, "Are you okay?" She just sighed and said, "So now you can help Kyle move this weekend, right?" I didn't answer. I just stared out the window where the tire tracks in the snow hadn't yet faded. I didn't cry. When you're used to being left behind, you learn not to need anyone's comfort. My mother was famous at church. She loved bragging about me, especially during festivals or fundraisers. I was Grace, the software engineer in the big city, taking care of the whole family, single, kind, and filial. Once I attended a church service with her. She introduced me to the crowd like a trophy, then got caught up chatting with others. No one recognized me as the person in her story. They shook hands, exchanged lively greetings. I sat alone with a cold cup of coffee. In their eyes, I was just a name tied to a boastful tale. They didn't know I was still paying off $8, $200 from co-signing Kyle's car loan. How many FAFSA forms had I signed? How many loan agreements? How many temporary favors I couldn't keep track? But I knew every signature was another noose around my neck. On Friday night, I opened my banking app. After paying my niece's tuition, my parents' car payment, and part of Kyle's rent late, again my balance was $216. I didn't panic. The only emotion I felt was exhaustion. Exhausted to the point I didn't bother calling the bank to raise my credit limit. Exhausted to the point I didn't consider selling anything. I just sat, opened my laptop, and created a new Google Sheet. I titled it, "Other People's Costs from My Money." I stared at the numbers. They were an indictment. No one forced me. No one made me sign anything. But they'd assumed I would always pay. I turned off the lights, not even bothering with the bedside lamp. The room was dark and silent. I lay on my side, clutching a thin pillow, listening to the clock tick. I wasn't strong. I wasn't good at saying no. I was just a tired woman being peeled away layer by layer by those who called me family. And in that moment, I knew I needed a plan. Not for revenge, but for survival. A plan to cut the cord. A plan that would start on Sunday at the park with the BBQ, the music, the checkered tablecloths, and a single button press. At 6 a.m. on Tuesday, 2 days after the picnic, my phone rang 4 times in less than 20 minutes. All from Jenna. Texts followed like cracks spreading across glass that seemed too thick to break. Sis Netflix logged me out. I tried the password, but it says payment no longer valid. Then Hulu too. Is the card expired? And finally, my phone lost signal. I'm using the neighbor's Wi-Fi to text. Can you check, please? I didn't reply. I didn't delete the messages. I just let them sit there like a test of my resolve. The emotion in me wasn't anger, just a thick, heavy silence like lake water after a night rain. I walked into the kitchen, brewed coffee, and turned on some light jazz on the radio. As I sat down, I realized it had been so long since I'd made coffee just for myself. Not to bring to Jenna, not for my mother to sip when she visited, not to set on Kyle's table as encouragement. That cup of coffee, bitter aromatic in mine. At the office, I was finishing a security report for an e-commerce project when my phone buzzed for the 7th time that day. Not Jenna. Kyle. I turned off the ringer, letting it vibrate. Then a text popped up. Just got a bank notice. This month's rent bounced. I thought you co-signed. A minute later, I need you to explain. They said you might have closed the account. I pursed my lips and placed the phone face down on the desk. During lunch, I drove to the leasing office where Kyle rented. When I walked in, the receptionist gave a faint smile. "Oh, Grace, we were about to call you. Your and Kyle's lease cosign is still under review." I nodded, calm but firm. I want to remove my name from the application. I'm no longer co-signing. Her eyes widened. "You know if the contract's signed, you'd be financially liable." "I know, but it hasn't been signed, and I'm not agreeing anymore." I signed the cancellation form. No trembling hands, no hesitation. As I stepped out of the office, the sunlight draped over my shoulders like a thin shawl. Not blinding, just warm. For the first time in years, I felt in control of something. That afternoon, Kyle showed up at my place. No heads up, no gentle knock. He pounded on the door like he was reclaiming stolen property. "Grace, open the door, I know you're in there." I didn't answer. He stood outside for nearly 10 minutes. I heard his shoes stomping on the steps, his muttered curses, his knocking turning to banging. Finally, I opened the door. Not because I was swayed. I just wanted to look him in the eye to see if he still saw me as a person, or just a dollar sign. What the hell's wrong with you? I can't pay rent. Now the leasing office is threatening to cancel. I'm losing the new place. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. Then find another place. In your name. With your income. His face flushed, his voice sharp. You know my income's unstable. I'm freelance. You also know I work 60 hours a week. But I've never asked anyone to pay my debts. He fell silent. Then muttered something, I don't remember what, just that his voice trembled. Not from emotion. From anger. I closed the door. I didn't wait for him to leave. That evening, my mother called. Before I could say anything, she sighed, the kind of sigh that made me nearly 40 feel like a child who'd done something wrong. Grace, I heard from Kyle. You went too far. He's your brother. Family is family. That phrase family is family echoed in my head like a tired lullaby. I replied, I've paid nearly $14,000 for him over the past 3 years. You never asked where I got that money. She went quiet for a few seconds, then said something that drew a clear line between understanding and pretending to understand. But you have a good job. They're not as lucky as you. I hung up. No words. That night, for the first time in months, I stood in my kitchen and cooked for myself. Not a rushed sandwich. Not instant noodles. A real meal, eggs baked with meat and greens. The smell of sautéed onions made me smile unexpectedly. I set the table, poured a glass of water, sat down, ate slowly. No TV, no phone. Not eating to survive, but to be present. After dinner, I opened my laptop and canceled every service one by one. The next morning, I went to work. In the elevator, I caught my reflection hair neatly tied old but ironed shirt, no dark circles under my eyes. At my desk, I found a handwritten letter. My name was written in neat, rounded letters slightly unfamiliar. I opened it. It was from my former manager, a woman who'd left the company after burning out from caring for her sick mother, unemployed husband, and 3 young kids. The letter was brief. Grace, I once saw you pay for a colleague's lunch without saying a word. Today I just want to say you don't need to save anyone. Sometimes surviving is how you save yourself. I folded the letter and tucked it into my wallet, and in that moment I knew I'd crossed a threshold. Not of anger, but of letting go. A call came at 2:17 p.m. on a stifling Monday as I poured my second cup of tea at the office. The screen showed an unfamiliar number with a +52 code. Mexico. I almost declined it. Thought it was a wrong number, a scam, or worse, someone else reaching out, because my name was on some unpaid financial contract. But then a feeling gripped my heart. I answered, Hello, this is the nurse at Jose Marti Elementary in Merida. Your daughter Lily listed you as her emergency contact. We haven't been able to reach her mother for 48 hours. She hasn't answered calls or texts. No greeting, no preamble. Just the raw truth, like a stone thrown into a still lake. Is something wrong with her? She's fine for now, but she's staying with a neighbor. The woman, her stepmother, is said to have gone to Cancun with friends. We think you should come. I stood, pushing my chair back, forgetting the hot tea in my hand. It spilled onto the floor. I didn't call anyone. Didn't text. Didn't notify work. I just packed a few clothes into a backpack, grabbed my passport wallet and charger, booked the earliest flight to Mexico City with a connecting flight to Merida. After clearing my carry-on, I realized I hadn't brought a jacket, just a thin sweater and sneakers with peeling soles. But I didn't care. I only thought of Lily's face, her voice calling Mommy with a slight Spanish accent from her quick lessons. I hadn't been with her in nearly a year. We video-called weekly, exchanged emails, shared photos, but a phone screen could never replace the warmth of her small hands. The flight took nearly 9 hours, including the layover. I barely slept, sitting upright, staring at the blank screen in front of me without turning on a movie. I remembered the night Lily left my home when my ex-husband, Ian, decided to move to New Mexico for a fresh start with his new partner. He said it was the stability she needed, that I was too busy, and Lily needed a full family. A full family, full of whom. I arrived in Merida near midnight. The airport was small, with dim yellow lights and a low ceiling, no flashy billboards like in big cities. I cleared customs, found a taxi, and showed the driver the address the nurse had texted. The old driver nodded, taking me through quiet suburban streets. We stopped at a faded green house with a wire fence and bougainvillea drooping over the window. A middle-aged man opened the door. He eyed me warily, then nodded when I said Lily's name. She's asleep in the living room, he said in broken English. I'm just watching her. Her mother left her here and didn't come back. I stepped inside. The air smelled of dust and fried oil. On an old sofa, Lily lay curled up under a thin blanket clutching a worn stuffed animal. I sat down resting my hand on her hair. She didn't open her eyes, but her lips moved Mommy. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tightly as if someone might take her away again. My heart pounded so hard, I could hear it in my ears. "You're okay now, sweetheart. Mommy's here." I took Lily to a small hotel on the outskirts, clean air, conditioned with a soft bed so she could sleep without startling awake. The next morning I took her for churros and hot milk. She chattered about school, her sleepy Spanish teacher, and her deskmate Lucia, who was jealous because Lily drew better. I listened to every word, every syllable, like someone drinking after a long thirst. We walked along Progreso Beach, bought sliced mango from a street vendor, took selfies in front of a big monument. Lily laughed a lot. I almost forgot I'd once been a woman who cried silently when the phone screen went dark. On the third day, I went to a lawyer's office, a man named Carlos, recommended by the nurse. He listened carefully. No interruptions, no judgment. "Do you have any custody documents?" he asked. "I have her birth certificate, and lots of emails between me and my ex. I don't have official custody, but I'm her mother." He nodded thoughtfully. "If the father can't care for her and is unresponsive, you can request emergency temporary custody. But it depends on state laws, and whether you can prove she was neglected." I nodded. There was no fear in me, just one thought I would try. Even if the law was murky, even if time was short, I would try. Because if I didn't, no one would do it for me. That evening, Lily fell asleep early after watching a cartoon on a Mexican kids channel. I sat in a chair, the yellow lamplight casting shadows on the wooden table, my laptop open, but unused. I watched her sleep, thought about the past 3 days, then further about the years I'd stepped back, believing family would come around if I didn't ask for anything. I was wrong, but that mistake wouldn't repeat with my daughter. She deserved a mother who was present, not just a provider. I checked my phone. Over a dozen missed calls from Kyle, Jenna, and my mother. My voicemail was full. One last text from my mother. "Are you so angry you're cutting us all off? I'm worried about you." I didn't open the messages. Didn't reply. I set the phone down and pulled the blanket over Lily. Tomorrow I'd return to the lawyer's office. I'd start the legal process. And when I returned to Portland, I wouldn't be the same person. I'd be the mother who'd learned family isn't an obligation tied to suffering. The road ahead might be long, but this time I was walking it for the child sleeping in my arms, not for anyone else. When I received an envelope with my mother's familiar handwriting, my heart didn't race as I expected. It just paused for a second, then continued as if used to being called out in silence. Inside was a handwritten letter, not an email, not a text. A real letter, white paper, blue ink, the neat, rounded script my mother used for Christmas cards. Only this time there were no well wishes. "Come home, please. We need to talk." No blame, no anger, just family. Below was a date and time, Sunday 4 p.m. The place, the old house where I grew up, and where I'd left over 15 years ago carrying a suitcase heavier than a 22-year-old, should both physically and emotionally. I thought about it for 3 days. Not because I didn't know whether to go, but because I needed to be sure if I stepped into that house I wouldn't back down. I wouldn't apologize for protecting myself. I arrived on time wearing a light brown turtleneck, dark jeans, hair neatly tied. No makeup. Nothing but a small bag and a sense of calm. The door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there as if she'd been waiting since morning. She didn't smile, but her eyes flickered with something between relief and calculation. "Come in, dear. Everyone's here." The living room was unchanged. Dark brown leather couch, glass coffee table, a crooked landscape painting. But the air today was thicker. Heavy. Every glance felt like an invisible tug. Kyle sat with his arms crossed, legs crossed, wearing sunglasses despite the cloudy day. Jenna held a glass of water, her fingers circling the rim. My father stood by the window, avoiding eye contact. My mother gestured for me to sit. I chose the farthest chair in the room, where I could see everyone. No one spoke for the first minute. Then Kyle broke the silence, his tone half joking, half sharp. "So, you gonna tell us when you decided to start cutting off aid? Or is this the part where we fill in the blanks?" Jenna chimed in, softer but no less biting. "I just thought you overreacted. Freezing accounts, deleting Google Drive access, acting like we're the enemy." I didn't respond. I just looked at them. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to soothe anyone in this room. My mother sighed, then said slowly, "Grace, I know you've carried a lot. We all know. But things can be worked out." Family shouldn't stay silent like this. It scares people. Scared of what I asked. She didn't answer, but her eyes shifted to Jenna as if seeking an ally. I sat up straight, hands resting lightly on my thighs, voice steady but clear. I'm not here to justify myself. I'm here to end this. No one laughed. No one breathed loudly. I turned to my mother first. Mom, I'm not your retirement plan. Not your emergency fund. Not a name for you to brag about at church saying, my daughter's successful supports the whole family. You never asked if I was okay. You only asked how much I had left. Her eyes dropped, blinking rapidly, but she didn't argue. I looked at Kyle. You used my name to rent places to borrow money. You go out drinking post selfies, tag me in posts, thanking family for always being there. You've never been there for me. Even when I lost my daughter, you only asked if I could help you move. Kyle's lips tightened. His eyes behind the sunglasses wavered. But he stayed still. Then I turned to Jenna. You only know how to ask. When I say nothing, you call me cruel. When I give, you say it's what I'm supposed to do. You're not a child anymore, Jenna. You have a kid. But you live like everything's temporary, and someone will always fix it for you. Jenna looked down, fingers still circling her glass. Her face flushed red. Finally, I looked at all three. I'm done being the one who pays. Not with money, not with energy, not with endurance. I took a breath, then said the words I'd held in for years. Family to me is no longer about blood. You are not my family. You're just people I used to live with. The words fell over the room like a chill. My father turned away. Kyle leaned back in his chair, silent. Jenna blinked rapidly as if wanting to cry, but holding back. My mother, she looked at me like she'd lost something she never thought she could. I stood up. Gently, no rush. No one reached for my hand. I walked through the old hallway past the drawings I'd made in elementary school. Through the kitchen where I'd spent hours washing dishes during gatherings I wasn't allowed to miss. And I opened the door, stepping outside. No one called my name. No one followed. No one apologized. I walked down the steps, opened my car door, and got in. The late afternoon sun poured over the windshield. In my heart, there was nothing but calm. I didn't cry. I didn't feel empty. I just felt lighter. For the first time, I left that house as someone no longer in debt. And as I started the car, my phone pinged with a new email. The subject line read, Carlos Law Office Re-Emergency Custody Filing. I smiled, softly, very softly, but real. Some battles aren't won by fighting back. They're won by standing up, walking away, and never looking back. I always thought peace would come like a breeze light, cool, unexpected. But it turns out peace is more like waking up on an autumn morning. No alarm, no phone calls, no texts from someone needing money, help, or for you to forget yourself to become them. Peace doesn't crash in. It seeps into the cracks of your heart when you're quiet enough to notice I'm still alive and living for myself. A month after the reconciliation at the old house, I still hadn't spoken to anyone in the family, not out of anger or to hurt them, but because I needed a silence no one could interrupt. I started redoing the living room. My small apartment had never felt like a home, at least not in the sacred sense. It was just a place to sleep after work, a pit stop between duties to others. Now I wanted it to breathe, to smell of baked bread, to hum with soft music in the early mornings. I ordered mint green paint for the second bedroom Lily's room. She wasn't moving in yet, but with the temporary custody, lawyer Carlos helped me secure she could visit for holidays in summer. I wanted to be ready. I laid down tarps, taped the walls, and painted every corner myself. The smell of fresh paint didn't bother me. It felt clean, like I was wiping away years of dust from living as the daughter everyone needed. I taped a note to the wall. Welcome home, Lily. Not welcome for a visit, but home. I also did something I'd avoided for years. I bought myself new shoes. Just simple brown flats, soft leather, no flashy brand. I stood by the display for 20 minutes, picking them up, putting them down, hesitating as if signing a loan. Then I looked at my old shoes, peeling toes, worn insoles, uneven soles. I whispered, Grace, it's just a pair of shoes. No one's dying over it. And I walked to the register. The cashier asked, do you have a membership card? I shook my head. Want to sign up, second pair's 50% off. I smiled, lightly shaking my head again. Just one pair. I started going to the market every weekend, buying fresh greens, brown rice, juicy yellow peaches. I relearned how to cook not survival meals, but food for myself. I tried red bean soup, radish salad, pan-seared chicken with butter and lemon. I set the table even if it was just me. I played music from a Bluetooth speaker sometimes, Tracy Chapman, sometimes Chopin. No one knocked on my door fresh from a shower to ask for a loan. No one texted at midnight for an emergency transfer. I no longer jumped at the sound of my phone. I wasn't lonely. I was alone, but not lonely. On the 27th day after the farewell, I received a package via certified mail. A thick envelope, no sender's name, just familiar handwriting on the recipient line. Grace Ann R. in purple ink with a slight curl on every A. Unmistakably Jenna's. I opened it. Inside was a check. $3,800. No card. No note, just a scribble on the back of an old notebook page. Sold the sofa. Sold the silver necklace, ditched the old makeup kit. No apologies. But I get it. I stood still in the kitchen. That morning I'd planned to bake, but I couldn't keep kneading dough. I just stood there holding the check, staring out the window at the small garden. 3 years, and Jenna had never paid back a cent, not even a thank you. But today, not out of regret, but understanding, she sent what she owed. I didn't call, didn't text, didn't void the check. I set it by the salt jar on the counter for 3 days. Every time I made coffee, I glanced at it, testing what I felt. On the 4th day, I picked it up, slipped it into my wallet, and deposited it into my savings at the bank. Not because I needed the money, but because I needed to know I could accept it without guilt. That afternoon, sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, casting shadows of the freshly watered plants. On the wooden shelf, I added a new frame, a photo of me and Lily at Progresso Beach, our hair tangled from the wind, but our smiles real. I took a pen and wrote on the frame's edge, Grace and Lily. Not mother and daughter by role, but Grace and Lily. 2 real people, 2 souls existing, growing, healing together. I looked at the photo for a long time, then smiled. Not big, just enough to know I was in the right place. I don't know what comes next. Maybe Jenna won't send another cent. Maybe Kyle will still post passive-aggressive rants. Maybe my mother will keep telling her church version of me. But I know they no longer control my wallet, my sleep, or the peace in this kitchen. I've rewritten my story. No editors, no approvals needed. I wrote it with every refusal, every canceled link, every step away without looking back. I no longer live to be loved, but because I've learned to love myself. And I've never been more certain. Lily will come soon, maybe for Thanksgiving or winter break. This time, I'll be waiting with the door open and a heart no longer trapped by invisible bills. I may have lost a family, but I've found a home. When I started writing this story, I didn't expect it to leave me speechless so many times. This isn't just the journey of a woman escaping, controlling, ungrateful relationships. It's a reminder love cannot survive if it only comes from one side. Grace's story isn't unique. It could be any of us. Those who stand in the background, supporting, sacrificing silently until they realize they've vanished in someone else's life. But the most beautiful thing I believe you feel too is the rebirth not in fireworks, but in small acts, a meal cooked for oneself, a frame hung on the wall, a courageous refusal. If you've ever seen yourself in this story, leave a comment. Share your feelings or just say hi. Sometimes knowing someone understands is a start. Don't forget to follow for more stories. We've got more roads to walk together.